Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome back. Joining me in studio now is Rob Dew to break down this global immigration crisis and what's behind it. Now, the Daily Mail is reporting how thousands of people have breached Europe's wall of wire. I mean, we could have told them that that wasn't gonna work, but I mean, can you blame these people for trying to escape the conditions they're in? Or I mean, obviously, what's driving this?
Well, what's driving it is one thing, but you know, they don't even have a ladder to go over this wall. They're going underneath the barbed wire, and there's some dramatic photos in there in that Daily Mail article showing families crawling under it, little kids getting caught with their hair in the barbed wire. I mean, it really is. Yeah, and they're playing it up as, look at these poor immigrants. We really have to come out and help them. There's some of the shots right there. And they're taking, it's interesting, at the bottom of this article, it shows the route they're taking from Africa coming in through Eastern Europe and then into Western Europe. And it's mainly because they're coming in because of the promise of welfare, help, and jobs. Now, when I was in Rome, I talked to a street vendor who was selling some jewelry. And he was from Bangladesh. In fact, I've got a photo of it we'll put up right here of him. He didn't want me to take a photo of his face, but he was showing me some necklaces. And I said, you know, where are you from? He goes, Bangladesh. I said, well, what made you want to come to Rome? He goes, well, I've got a kid coming next year, early next year. I'm going to be a father. And he goes, there's too many people in Bangladesh and not enough jobs. Mm-hmm. So he goes, at least in Rome, he goes, there's a lot of people here, but there's jobs if you want them. And so he was out there working. He was working with another guy, and they were you know, selling their wares and whatnot. But that's why people are coming. They think there's jobs in Europe, that there's no jobs anywhere else, I guess, where they're coming from. And then you also have the aspect that in Libya, in Syria, these are all areas that we helped bomb and destroy in the last few years. There's total chaos in these areas.
ISIS is stealing, kidnapping women and children.
So people feel like they have nothing else to do. So they're making this trek with their kids. They're fleeing for their lives with their possessions on their back. This is dramatic stuff. They're crawling into boats. I mean, there's another Daily Mail article, horror of the migrant boat tragedy, where they're just finding boatloads of migrants. They're just piling into these things.
Or 70 found dead in a truck after suffocation.
That was in Austria. At first they thought it was 50, and then they opened up the back of the truck and finally counted the bodies. There was 59 men, a few women, and then one child they found dead in there. And they just arrested a Bulgarian who was transporting these people. And that's the thing. The coyotes, what we call them here, they're transporting these people. They treat them like garbage. Mm-hmm. They beat them. They steal from them. And they're basically at the mercy of it because they're not in their homeland. They have no idea
pay
where
us
to go.
And we'll get you there safely. And then here they end up, you know, drowning or suffocating. And
right. And so Europe is going, well, we got to do something. We got to take them in. So they're taking them in. And then you have what Paul Watson wrote about yesterday. This is an article that was up on Infowars. France prepares for mass unrest, radicalized immigrants taking over cities. And what's happening is these people are coming in. These are several generations now. These are the kids, probably the great-grandkids of the people who originally went there. But now these kids are growing up. They know they're not really Europeans. They don't see themselves as Europeans. They see themselves as either Muslim or something else, wherever they're from. And they're basically, you know, beating the crap out of cops. And cops don't want to go in this area. Tourists aren't going in these areas. People are staying away from them. And now they're coming up with a plan to bring the army in to actually go into these neighborhoods and take control. And so that's what you get after a while, because when you don't bring people in and say, hey, if you're going to come in this country, this is how we expect you to act. If you want to live here, we expect you to act like a Spaniard or an Italian or
these are our laws.
an
It's
English.
not Sharia law.
Right. And we don't do that in our country. Mm-hmm. We don't bring in people and say, look, if you're going to come in this country, here's the path to citizenship. This is what it is. You have to go through these steps. None of that ever happens. It's like, oh, we're going to take you in. We're going to take all your customs, whatever you want. We lay out the red carpet for them. We give them benefits. Mm-hmm. And this is here. It happens in Europe, happens in Canada. And then you get these problems later on where now they feel entitled to everything to be given to them.
Right.
And that's where the problem comes.
And feel victimized when they're not accepted into the society, when they're not really assimilating into whatever the culture is like in the country that they're now going to.
Norway's having big problems. Sweden's having problems. Norway, they actually are trying to take former ISIS fighters and actually re-educate them. and to get them back into society.
Yeah, the old State Department, give them jobs, and maybe they won't blow people up.
And that's what you get when you get a socialist utopia that you have up in Scandinavia. You know, they've tried for that, but now they're allowing in hordes of immigrants who don't want to hold on to those Norwegian values.
But so what is behind this? I mean, we see what's happening here in the United States. It's the whole Cloward and Piven strategy of flooding the country with people who are going to, you know, be on welfare, so that the only way to save everything is to make the state bigger, get everyone, you know, needing the government.
Right, create more welfare, bring in people to teach them that guns are bad, and so then you can create a voting bloc that will then go after people's guns, that will keep people like Hillary Clinton in office.
Right.
And, you know, just a little side note here, people are all worried about Hillary Clinton, you know, bolting out of the election. She's not going to withdraw. She's already got 1/5 of the delegates already pledged to her.
Right.
So it's a long hill for anybody else. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, no, they don't have a chance, really.
She's not going to relinquish the power.
And she's the kind of person they want in there because, you know, she's forward thinking. That means more immigrants coming in,
right,
and not being, you know, assimilated to the way of life here in America, which is, it's different than, you know, Africa or some parts of Mexico. I mean, a lot of Mexicans, I think when they come here, they know what to do. They're hardworking. I see them working all the time around Austin. I mean, and I don't know if they're legal or illegal, but I know some are. You can go to the Home Depots and you can see them hanging out looking for a job, and those guys, I guarantee you, are not legal, and that's why they go there to get picked up to work on some of these crews. But they're also trying to provide for their families, so I can't really fault people for doing that at all.
The conditions they're
I can't fault any of these people. They're escaping war and tragedy and death and ISIS, and they have to go somewhere. But you know, this all goes back in Europe. This goes back to something, when I met Leo Zagami, who's a researcher of the Vatican, we did a long interview with him, and he kept talking about the Kalergi plan, And he's like, have you ever heard of the Kalergi plan? I'm like, no, I never heard of it. And a couple days ago, actually today, we posted his article about the Kalergi plan, which happened to just coincide really well with everything that was going on. This is a man, his name was Richard Kalergi. He died in 1972. In 1922, he co-founded the Pan-European Union, and he was all about, I guess, watering down Europe, is what he said. And in his, he writes, actually, in 1925, he wrote a book called Practical Idealism, and he wrote, the man of the future will be of mixed race. Today's races and classes will gradually disappear, owing to the vanishing space, time, and prejudice. The Eurasian Negroid race of the future, similar in its appearance to ancient Egyptians, will replace the diversity of peoples with the diversity of individuals. Now, what does that mean? That means bringing in the whole world into Europe, getting rid of sovereignty. And on the surface, yeah, it doesn't seem bad. Hey, we're all one people anyway. This human race is one people. We all come from Africa, if you trace it all back to the roots. But what this plan is doing is creating two classes of people, a upper class, which will run and control everything, and then a giant lower class, which will be a mixed race type class where when you look at something like Idiocracy, everybody's kind of overweight and large Hispanic people. You know, it's how they drew it out the timeline for that. And what that is going to do, it's not going to be good in the end for people who want to better themselves, who want to be upwardly mobile. There's never going to be any hope in the end if you take everybody in and go, we're just going to let Africa fall apart and the Middle East fall apart and Eastern Europe. We're just going to let all these places fall apart and take everybody. We can't do it. It's physically impossible. There's not enough money to go around. Well,
just like they want to make the United States a welfare state, they want that on a global level.
They do. And, you know, here's an article from 2014 out of the BBC, Q&A. What benefits can EU migrants get? They don't call them illegal aliens, but, you know, they can get, back then, and this is just job seekers, they could get an allowance of $116 a week. That may not seem like a lot to me or you, but to somebody coming in from Africa, that's a hell of a lot of money. And that is impotent. Wow, boy, I can get that much. I can live with that.
When you're living on $1 a day or less in some places, I mean, it's okay if you're going to come here and make $5 an hour.
There you go. They also can claim a housing benefit, tax benefits, and then, you know, the spending per person. This is back in 2010. This is 5 years ago. 8,000 euros per person in the UK, 9,000 in Denmark, and in the Netherlands, it was actually France and Germany was 9,000. Denmark and the Netherlands, it was above 10,000 per person.
Wow.
You can't sustain that if you don't have people contributing into the tax base.
And I don't know why it's so difficult to get people to see that.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force,